Welcome back once again to Dave Reads and Writes. I'm reading screenwriting books and using them to write screenplays. That's the premise of this channel. We're going through Save the Cat. So last time I came up with 6 very broad premises for stories, and I said I'd choose one and flesh it out as a logline. Still haven't done that yet. I haven't decided which one stands out to me the most. These were specifically ideas that I haven't fallen in love with, so I guess it's not that surprising. But a few of you have already weighed in on which ones you like, but there wasn't really any strong consensus, so I'm going to ruminate on them a little longer. But I did carve out the time to read Chapter 2 of Save the Cat. So Chapter 2 is called Give Me the Same Thing, Only Different. And it's about finding that balance between fitting into a genre and avoiding cliches. He posits 10 genres of story, but he makes notes that it's not the movie genres based on aesthetics or mood like we're used to. It's not genres like Western or sci-fi or horror, but genres based more on the types of character conflict and growth. And I do find that more structurally helpful as a starting point than just knowing what dressing to put on it. But, of course, I still have issues here. How couldn't I? So it's here on page 25. He lists what he feels are the 10 basic genres, and then he spends the rest of the chapter fleshing them out. The genres are monster in the house, which is largely self-explanatory, but he does include non-supernatural movies like Fatal Attraction, Golden Fleece, which is his category for quests, Out of the Bottle, which is wish fulfillment and curse movies, and he mentions 3 Jim Carrey movies as examples, Dude with a Problem, which is ordinary person in extraordinary circumstances, Rites of Passage, which is basically the story of Job, stories of being broken down by life and learning to accept circumstances. Buddy Love, not the Nutty Professor character, just buddy stories about duos who grow to love each other either platonically or romantically. Why Done It, which is, of course, mysteries, but he calls it Why Done It because he makes the case that the story is really about the culprit's motivation, not about the culprit's actions. It's not about finding the culprit, it's about understanding what would drive the culprit to do such a terrible thing. And then there's The Fool Triumphant, which includes comedies about goofballs, but it's really just any sort of underdog story or anyone who's seemingly unprepared for a situation. Institutionalized, which is about groups, institutions, and families, and finding the balance between individuality and group dynamics while critiquing the problems with the group dynamics. Superhero, which he says is the opposite of Dude with a Problem because it's extraordinary people in an ordinary world. And he says you should know all the big movies in each genre very well so you know what's been done before, both to know what works and to know what cliches to avoid and how to put twists on them. Not a lot of specific advice on how to avoid the cliches, but what you gonna do? Some of the genres are pretty broad. Like, I don't think Dude with a Problem is particularly helpful as its own genre when every story is by definition about a protagonist facing a problem. It kind of feels like he just needed a category for other stories, but I don't know. Also, for all his talking about how you should know the movies in your genre forward and backward, he seemed to skimp on some of his own research. Like on page 42 here, he calls Roger Rabbit Who Saved Roger Rabbit. Now, to be fair, that's probably just a typo his editor should have caught, but then also in talking about The Fool Triumphant on page 38, he mentions Straight Men to the Fool and includes, and I quote, Herbert Lom and the Pink Panther. Presumably he meant the Pink Panther series, but the way it's written makes it sound like he's implying that Chief Inspector Dreyfus is in the first movie, the motion picture that is simply called The Pink Panther, and he sure isn't. Did you mean In a Shot in the Dark? It's a nitpick to get hung up on, I know, if you're gonna... It's just, if you're going to shame the reader for not knowing the other movies in their genres, the least you could do is not make easily avoidable mistakes in your discussions of the genres. And I promise, I am not consciously looking for things to nitpick here. I'm sure I am subconsciously, and that's on me. That's not fair. I know none of this is actually what's important. What's important is, does the advice work? And honestly, at the moment, it doesn't matter. I'm committed to following the advice either way. And the point of the genres is to be helpful in figuring out the mechanics of the story. So other than just the ones that are too broad, like Dude with a Problem, I hope that it actually will be helpful for me. I will say he's not as rigid as people criticize him for being. Like the people who say he's just so perpetuating formulaic stuff, like it does sound like that when you break down genres so specifically, but he does actually say in the exercises at the end, he encourages you to make up your own genre, find exceptions if you can. If you can find multiple movies, maybe you've discovered a new genre, and to contact him. Obviously, can't anymore because he's passed away. But he does encourage people to think beyond this. He just is pretty confident that these are the basic 10, and, that's fair enough. And, yeah, it would have been helpful if he had more advice on how to start thinking in a way to tell the difference between essential tenets of the genre and cliches to avoid in the genre, but there's probably no actual specific magical way of thinking to fix that. It's just trial and error, figuring it all out. So in working on whatever script I'm going to write with this, since I still haven't narrowed down which premise I'm going with, I thought pairing them with the existing genres might give me a sense of their shape and help one be the standout. So I went through my list of premises and went through the genre list to see if any match up easily. The comedic Casablanca could honestly be framed as an out of the bottle if our fake Rick Blaine has been looking for revenge for this breakup or catharsis for this breakup, and this is his opportunity to lord something over his ex. But it also could be rites of passage if it's more about him just coming to terms with the breakup in the first place and just learning to actually accept this breakup. The serious Superbad could be a monster in the house if it's mostly about evading the cops, or it could be Dude with a Problem, or it could be Buddy Love like the real Superbad is. The FBI agent going undercover as a barista, the obvious answer for anything about a special agent is superhero, but I don't love that. I honestly think it would be more fun as full triumphant if the FBI agent is in way over their head. It also could be Why Done It or Golden Fleece, depending on what the agent's mission is, and that would honestly probably be the easier way to write it, even if it would be the less substantial movie. Vampire School could easily be rites of passage as our new vampire just comes to terms with their new afterlife or their new undead life. It could also be institutionalized if our new vampire shakes up the vampire world from the inside. But I think institutionalized works better when it's an actual institution being deconstructed. But the vampire world could easily be a metaphor for some human experience. I just don't know if that would make for a more interesting story. Preservationist versus real estate developer, it's really easy to make that Buddy Love. There's probably a lot of, I could work it into any one of the genres, but Buddy Love is the easy, obvious choice. Serial killer barista could have shades of Why Done It or Monster in the House. But I really like the idea that the murder plot is all in the customer's head, and I'm not quite sure what that would fit into. Possibly full triumphant, except not really triumphant. Possibly rites of passage. I really need to think it over. If I'm committed to using the genres as Blake has laid them out, I really need to figure out. It might still be Monster in the House, just the monster isn't the barista. The monster is himself. I don't know. In the meantime, I am still taking votes on which premise seems the strongest, and hopefully I'll actually choose one and flesh it out into a logline soon, since this is supposed to be about becoming a faster writer, and part of writing faster is training myself to actually make decisions. But until I do, I'm still ruminating on them. Next time, I will move on to chapter 3, and maybe I will have actually landed on some actual choices. And even when I commit to whichever premise I'm working with, I'll still keep the other premises as potential premises for future scripts I'm writing with other books. In the meantime, if you have this book and you're reading along, let me know your thoughts. If you don't have this book, let me know your thoughts anyway, because I crave interaction. And until next time, this is Dave, signing off.